So, Greg, what started out as a very positive weekend for Evertonians with the good win turned into a very negative one with the news about Gary Speed. What was your reaction to that?
Just, I think, like everybody else, complete disbelief, shock, almost wondering, is it some sort of wildly inappropriate rumour that's done the rounds on the internet or something? And came into the office yesterday and began to contact people who knew Gary far better than me. I'd only ever interviewed him once in March this year when he was doing a speech for some sports science students at Liverpool University. I wasn't the Everton reporter when he was playing for Everton. I was probably turned up at Grissom Park every weekend to cheer him on. So it was just stunningly sad. When I met him and interviewed him this year, like everybody else, my impression of him was that as a kind, sort of modest, easy to chat to gentleman, and that's not just sort of platitudes after the event. That was what I told colleagues and pals at the time. I was very impressed with him, and as sad as everybody else.
That reaction shared by Evertonians everywhere, really. Some real sort of heartfelt tributes to Gary Speed over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Gary was only at Everton for two, in many ways, two short seasons. Really, he was such a talented, almost like a complete midfielder, that it was a massive shame he didn't hang around for much longer. And I think history will probably one day show why he left. And although nobody was prepared to break the confidence that he put in local journalists when he left, he left for good, valid and honest reasons on his behalf. He didn't leave for the money. He didn't. Everton was his boyhood club. He loved Everton. He was at the Wolves game, I believe, last weekend, cheering them on. And it's terribly sad, especially now in hindsight, that he received stick from some small section of fans when he left the club. Like I say, he had his reasons. My colleague Dave Prentice, who was the Everton writer while Gary was at the club, like every other journalist he's ever met, from the sounds of it, didn't have a bad word to say about him, and wrote a very moving piece yesterday, not long after it was announced that Gary had been found dead. And the reaction is not just confined to supporters or fellow professionals. It's across the board in the media too, and it's a surprise in the sense that when journalists can often have different views of certain sports people, especially off the record. Not all sports people are very fond of journalists for some quite valid reasons sometimes, but in this case it just seems that he's treated everyone, reporters, media, everyone, classily and like a true gentleman, because there's a lot of sad journalists out there, as well. People have been stunned, and a lot of heartfelt tributes being written by people who knew him through the local media as well. So it's just devastating news.
Now, obviously that took people's attention, and rightly so, away from Everton's victory over the weekend. But if we can just focus on that for a while, it was a very good win for the Blues, and also, which perhaps could be key going forward, a clean sheet as well. Yeah,
I think that's the most important thing. It's a surprise when you think that, I've said before, a back line with almost all international players in it, experienced defenders in the Premier League, has only recorded now 2 clean sheets all season. But I think partly to mitigate that, you've got to take into account the amount of goals being scored in the Premier League this time around. There's some top strikers, Manchester City, United, Chelsea. They've all got some really potent forward players, and goals are flying in. So it's not unique to Everton, but Everton have, I said it time and time again in my match reports, traditionally been based under David Moyes on a solid bedrock, a foundation of defensive toughness. And at times this season it hasn't been there. Sometimes there's not much you can do. Other times I've noticed a bit of a worrying lack of concentration. But that wasn't in evidence against Bolton on Saturday. Quite the opposite. They did well against a team at home who were coming off the back of a really good win last time they were at the Reebok when they thrashed Stoke. So it was a good performance, and it was Tim Howard made some good saves, stood up well, and it was a good day all around for the Blues.
Apart from Tim Howard, did anyone else stand out for you? Anyone else step up to the plate, as it were?
Yeah. Well, my man of match in the paper today is Marwan Fellaini. I believe that was his one of his best performances of the season in many ways, and not just because he scored, although obviously getting the Blues ahead in the game after half time was crucial, because so often their lack of cutting edge in the final third can undo them. But this time, Felly, as ever, when you need him, he's there on the spot, and it was a smart finish. But what impressed me more about Felly's performance was the fact that he was assigned the task to limit the effectiveness of Kevin Davis, the Bolton skipper, the big target man, and he's the guy that makes them tick. He wins all the headers, and often his knockdowns are what Bolton thrive off in an attacking sense. And Flaherty challenged him for every single header. He didn't win every header, but he made sure Kevin Davis knew he was there. He basically knocked him out of his stride. I think that was a crucial part of Everton's game plan, and it worked handsomely. There were other great performances though. Dinia Biljettinov has his detractors, but he was enjoying a rare start with Drenthe being unfit, and he did well. Baines, as ever, Baines, he was fantastic, consistently excellent, and the back four, particularly Tim Howard, played well as well. So some bright performances all round.
Of course, second win on the bounce. Is it too early to say, or have Everton, do you think, sort of turned a corner in the season perhaps?
Well, it was so important after such a rotten run of results that they started to put together that some wins, really get points on the board. And Everton, prior to when they went into that glut of really tough fixtures, were adept at consecutive wins, and that's what we've got again now. And if you actually look at the situation at the table as it stands, they're in 9th. It's so tight from, say, 17th, 18th up to 8th or 9th. A couple of wins can stand you in really good stead, and it looks like Everton have actually sort of kick-started things a little bit before they traditionally do. Normally they wait till January to get going, but they've got some on paper winnable games. It's not always the way, but Stoke, Norwich, West Brom, excluding Arsenal, visit to Emirates is always difficult. Like I say, there's some winnable games on the horizon. It could well see them in a really healthy position come January.
And this weekend coming up, it's Stoke. What do you think of that looking ahead? I mean, always difficult opponents, it seems.
Yeah, always are difficult opponents, but I think the fact that might go in Everton's favour this time is that Stoke playing in the Europa League on Thursday, and whilst they've adapted well to the Europa League and to European nights at the Britannia, they seem to be suffering from the familiar hangover from teams in European competitions for the first time, when they sort of put it all out there on the European stage and suffer the consequences back in the domestic league. They've had a poor record after they've been in Europe, and Everton have got a week to recover, more than a week to recover, get Jack Rodwell fit, which I'm told is something that's likely to happen. He looks like he'll recover from his rib injury, and that'll be a big boost. Get Drenthe fit again, and it might well be that they can steamroll the Stoke and start like they mean to go on.